Alright, now he says that when he was figuring out his new method, quote, "At that time I learned how to translate the language of dreams into the forms of expression of our own thought language." Our own thought language. That's a thought with a dash language, okay, which can be understood without further help. He learned how to translate the language of dreams into something that we can understand without further help. Brilliant! Right? It's just that it's not true. Then he says that this knowledge is essential for the psychoanalyst, for the dream is one of the roads along which consciousness can be reached by the mental material, which, on account of the opposition aroused by its content, has been cut off from consciousness and repressed. That's what comes up in dreams, is things that have been repressed, and has thus become pathogenic. I don't know what pathogenic means. The dream, in short, is one of the detours by which repression can be evaded. Wow. Evading repression. I thought repression was a form of evasion. But I guess if you double negate, then you've undone it, I guess. I don't know. So he's saying that the dream is a detour which gets past repression. So when people dream something, you can see into their mind what's really going on, because the dream doesn't repress. That sounds plausible, but I think that people who use repression, rather than just dreaming about things they're repressing, have nightmares in which they don't know what is going on and they don't know why the nightmare is there. So not that they're necessarily repressing, but that they're not facing something that is giving them problems. So I fear I may have a more reasonable view of dreams than Freud. Here we got some children screaming in the front. Alright, we skip about 5 pages. One day, her parents were thrown into a state of great alarm by finding upon the girl's writing desk, or inside of it, a letter in which she took leave of them because, as she said, she could no longer endure her life. So it's a goodbye note, a suicide note. She says, "I'm done with this life." And they found it. And here's what she says to Freud. She says, "How on earth did they find the letter? It was shut up in my desk." End quote. So in other words, they must have been snooping or something. But here's what Freud says. Since she knew that her parents had read this draft of a farewell letter, okay, she knew that much. My parents read this. I, Freud, conclude that she had herself arranged for it to fall into their hands. Full stop. End of the sentence. Yeah. Alright. Since they read it, she must have arranged for it to happen. Instead of having sympathy for the girl and saying, "My God, you're on the verge of suicide? Life's valuable, come on." Instead of that, he says, "You wanted them to find this." Now maybe she did. I don't know. Maybe it was a cry for help. But for him to second guess her and tell her that she's being blatantly dishonest with him is just not very nice for a clinician. We skip a page and a half. In 1896, shortly after the appearance of my Studien über Hysteria, written, that's a Studien is German for study. Über is over, so study over hysteria, probably study of hysteria. I asked an eminent fellow specialist for his opinion upon the psychological theory of hysteria put forward in that work. So he asked this prominent other guy in the field what he thinks. What do you think of my stuff? And the guy says, he bluntly replied that he considered it an unjustifiable generalization of conclusions which might hold good for a few cases. Okay, that guy had a pretty reasonable response, didn't he? Since then, says Freud, he says, I've seen a bunch of cases. I've been occupied anywhere from days to years with these cases. Quote, not in a single one of them have I failed to discover the psychological determinants which were postulated in the Studien. Namely, now, okay, so he says, I keep on finding these things that I've postulated as being the base cause of hysteria. I keep finding them in each case. Now, does that mean that he's right? That these are the base cause of hysteria? Or does it mean that he is like a fortune teller or something who can give several sentences which will fit virtually anybody? Let's see what he says. Then here are the psychological determinants which he postulated in the Studien, and which he's found across the board in every case of hysteria. Psychic trauma, some sort of trauma in your life. Ladies and gentlemen, find one person on the planet who has had no psychological trauma of any kind in their entire life. Psychic trauma, a conflict of affects, and an additional factor which I brought forward in later publication, a disturbance in the sphere of sexuality. He is obsessed with sex. He thinks it's at the base of everything. So how many people could you not find some disturbance in their sphere of sexuality in any way, going back to when there were 3 maybe? And you say, I remember one time when I was 3, I pooped my pants. My mom was mad because I was supposed to be diaper trained. And Freud would say, but you wanted to poop your pants, or something like this, you know. And so he's going to... that's not sexual. Okay, take that back. There must be something in the sphere of sexuality he can find in every single case. You couldn't possibly go through a whole person's life and find no psychic trauma and no sphere of sexual problems. Nothing in the sphere of sexuality. No problems at all. Especially Freud. He'd be able to find them, even if they weren't there. And what about a conflict of affects? AFF. So that what they are trying to put forward is the truth, what they're trying to assert themselves as to people, conflicts with what they really are. Now, that's just his article of faith. And he says he's found his article of faith plus these other 2 things which you could find anywhere in anyone, especially him. So he's absolutely certain that he's right about this. These are very convenient, interpretable. You can interpret them your own way, and they are non-provable. You can't prove that there was whatever psychic trauma he might name in a given person's life. You can't prove that that actually is a trauma that causes any problems. Okay? Even though you can take this patient's word for it. They say, this caused me problems. Okay, take their word for it. But he's treating it like scientific knowledge, and it's like fortune telling. It's like you could find that anywhere in anyone. Okay. Oh man. This is a footnote. So this is about a physician in Vienna who does not find sexual factors important, or does not believe that they're important. This physician was consulted in the case of a 14-year-old girl who suffered from dangerous hysterical vomiting. She vomited too much, right? He made up his mind to ask her the painful question whether by any chance she had ever had a love affair with a man. Now why, oh why, would, I mean, I don't know any medical cases that cause constant vomiting, except like bulimia nervosa, but why would you, why is a girl comes and she's vomiting, you say, have you ever had a sexual affair? 14-year-old girl, possible, right? And she says, no, absolutely not. She's no doubt about this. She's shocked, and she turns to her mom and she says, only fancy, the old stupid asked me if I was in love. She afterwards came to Freud for treatment and proved, though not during our very first conversation,